Welcome back to this fourth video, which is all about discernment as an embodied Christian practical wisdom. Primary school children learn a proverb about knowledge and wisdom, and it's this: knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. That little proverb tells us that wisdom and knowledge are connected. Knowledge is rooted in observation, and wisdom is rooted in experience. How do Baptists know if we have truly discerned the mind of Christ? You know, qualitative research often unearths interesting results. Indeed, I was truly surprised that the participants, Barbara, Colin and Matthew, all discussed the word feeling and discernment. And this connection led me to explore Baptist discernment as a form of embodied Christian practical wisdom. Participant Barbara describes discernment as, "I felt the mind of Christ in a final decision on calling a minister." Likewise, Colin, he said he knew the mind of Christ had been discerned when he felt comfortable with a trustee recommendation. Matthew, a regional minister at the time, observed a church meeting where one prophetic voice spoke, and he said you could feel the whole meeting turn on a fulcrum, or as I have heard it described, you know it in your knower. When Baptists discern the mind of Christ, we do it from a basis of Scripture, and we seek the Spirit's guidance, but we check discernment with how we feel, and we look for a sense of peace to proceed. And it's this feeling in discernment that generates a Baptist divine gut, which contributes to an embodied Christian practical wisdom for Baptists. The divine gut is both an index of the presence of Christ and a recognition of the Spirit's movement. Embodied Christian practical wisdom is quite a long phrase, so we're going to unpack it, beginning with the word wisdom and then moving on to embodied. Jesus uses the Greek word phronesis, meaning wisdom, in Matthew 7, and he uses it to describe the wise man who builds his house on the rock. And of course, it is always wise to listen to Jesus and to build our lives on him, our rock. We believe this to be true, and we practice building our house on the rock whenever we choose the wisdom of Christ. Likewise, the philosopher Aristotle reminds us that phronesis, practical wisdom like this, grows over time and through careful consideration as we build our lives on Christ brick by brick. Recently, theologians like Don Browning and Edward Farley and Bonnie Miller McLemore have reminded us again of the value of practical wisdom in the Christian faith. In our faith communities and in our Baptist life together, there is practical wisdom which helps us to know that we have discerned the mind of Christ. Embodied wisdom recognises that our bodies and our minds help us to know what to do. Now, I'm not great with a needle and thread, but my grandma Gladys was brilliant. She could make anything I wanted. All I had to do was to draw it on a little piece of paper and she would be able to produce it. She had never been taught how to sew at a university. She knew instinctively how to cut fabric, what kind of stitch to use, and how to pleat or hem and shape with darts. She knew how to sew because she was experienced in her craft. She might have known how to do it in her head, but her hands and her eyes also knew it, so much so it was almost impossible to say where the knowledge itself came from. Embodied wisdom is a type of knowing where the body itself knows how to act. And it's based on this idea that Sharon talks about in this way. Experiences layer as sedimentation in one's body so that one gains the salience with which one can read a situation and see what it is that needs to be done. Embodied wisdom focuses on our lived experience. Baptists use embodied practical wisdom through the experience of discerning in the past and sensing where the Spirit is leading forward in the church meeting. So how does embodied wisdom help us know if we have discerned the mind of Christ at a church meeting? Baptist bodies are recognised at the church meeting, as each member normally has to be present to participate. Once present, members are called to listen with their ears and their hearts to others, to raise a hand, to speak, to interject and to vote. It is Baptist bodies that determine when the Spirit has spoken and when discernment has occurred by our common divine gut. But it is these same bodies that are broken with conflict, wither with dull agendas, and dismember from the church meeting when other members of the body are poorly treated. Slow wisdom is an embodied Christian practical wisdom that is completely open to the Spirit leading the church. Theologian Bell Hooks says this about practical wisdom. Practical wisdom helps us to remember that ideas are not fixed and static, but always subject to change. Hence, there is the capacity for ideas to illuminate and heighten our sense of wonder and our recognition of the power of mystery. If we discern using practical wisdom, Baptists are free to make new decisions or change previous decisions through embodied knowledge. As such, Baptists might use Hooks' language of being open to new ideas in discernment. For surely the work of the Spirit is neither fixed nor static, but always transforming and renewing. The Baptist practice of slow wisdom seeks to hear the Spirit in the world and shapes a form of embodied slow wisdom seen in the church meeting. As this video draws to a close, I wonder in what ways might the Baptist divine gut help us to discern the mind of Christ?